So a lot of you have been asking me recently, man, when are you going to start doing the mailbag videos again? Because a lot has happened with the Bulls since the trade deadline, and we have questions. So backed by popular demand, in this video, I'll be going over your mailbag questions that some have left on the channel as well as in the Discord. So thank you to all those who have left questions. Also, a huge shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring this video, and more on that in a little bit. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So let's kick it off with our first question, which comes to us from Johnny Cross. What is your take on the suggestions that the Bulls should trade Lavine for the coming #1 draft pick, presumably Cade Cunningham? So I haven't heard any rumors or suggestions about a trade like this. First off, although a very small chance, but if the Bulls miss the playoffs, they have a shot at landing the #1 pick, so they could get Cade Cunningham anyway without having to give up Lavine for him. But let's say that we don't get the #1 pick, because that is going to be pretty unlikely for where the Bulls are at right now. I mean, my take on this, no, not even close. I'm not about trading for an established all-star in their prime for a guy who hasn't played a single game in the NBA. There have been too many busted draft picks in recent years of potential franchise-changing players that ended up going nowhere, and I wouldn't risk Zach Lavine on that. Even for Lavine's flaws, I would much rather stick with someone like Lavine over Cade Cunningham. And that's not to say Cunningham is a scrub or anything like that. No, I actually think he has a lot of star potential. You know, he has star potential written all over him, and he fits the need for what the Bulls are looking for in a playmaking and scoring point guard. But trading for Lavine straight up, no, not even close. I mean, the only way you could make this deal more attractive is, say, if you also included another asset or a young player. So say the #1 pick goes to the Timberwolves. Again, they're the most likely candidate to get the #1 pick, given they have the worst record in the league. You would need to trade the #1 pick and someone like Anthony Edwards for Lavine, who could still fill that spot at the shooting guard if you're moving on from Lavine. But even then, I don't like that trade at all, just because you're essentially committing to a new rebuild with young players. And then where does Lavine, where does that leave Vucevic, right, who will be 31 by next season? The timeline doesn't make sense, and Lavine is more valuable than those two players. Next up, we have The Game. What year, to be exact, do you think the Chicago Bulls will win a championship? And do you see Zach Lavine getting his jersey retired by the Chicago Bulls and Zach Lavine making the Hall of Fame? So this was really 3 questions in one, and I'll try to answer them all in order. As far as, what year do I see the Bulls winning a championship? I mean, this is so hard to say, because I think people forget how difficult it actually is to win a championship, even when you have a really good team. You have to get really lucky with health, the players fitting well together, the matchups you face up against in the playoffs, so many different factors. I mean, only one team out of 30 can win a championship. The Bulls haven't won a championship in 23 years now, and have really only been contending for about 5 of those seasons since that last championship back in the Rose Noah years. So I really don't have an answer for what year I could potentially see the Bulls winning a championship. I would like to think that it'll be this decade, but it's so tough to predict. I will say, though, that I do expect the Bulls to be a contending team in the next 3 to 5 years with the aggressiveness we've seen from the front office. They obviously want to win, and win now, and my hope is that they'll make the necessary moves to get there in the near term. As for your questions on whether or not I see Zach Lavine getting his jersey retired by the Bulls and making the Hall of Fame, well, first of all, a lot of it depends on how many seasons Lavine is going to be playing with the Bulls. I mean, if he leaves Chicago in free agency next season, then no, since that's only 5 seasons with the team, and if he wasn't able to make it to the playoffs in any of those years, he's not going to get his jersey retired, especially when the Bulls franchise is pretty strict about jersey retirements. I mean, in their over 50 years of existence, they have only retired 4 jersey numbers, so it's pretty exclusive. They're not going to retire a guy's jersey for playing just 5 seasons with them, and who had some nice numbers but didn't translate into winning. That's not to throw shade at Lavine, it's just the fact of the matter when you're talking about retiring someone's jersey. And then, as far as Lavine making the Hall of Fame, no, I mean, obviously he still has a good amount of his career left in front of him, but he's got to make it to the playoffs first before we can even talk about him entering into the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying he can't get there, but at least from what we've seen now, he's not a Hall of Famer. A great player, an incredible athlete, a star in this league, but not a Hall of Famer. Before I get into the next question, and the next one also pertains to Zach Lavine, so stay tuned for that. But guys, a personal story about myself. And if you've been following the channel for a while now, you know I don't usually talk about my personal life, but during the pandemic, I started working from home, like a lot of people during this time. And I am by nature a bit of a hustler, so when I was afforded a bit more time because we were all locked away in our homes for so long, I thought, what are some other ways that I can be a bit more productive with my hobbies? And that's how I came to start this channel, which has been a lot of fun creating content and talking Bulls basketball with you guys. And I had no idea the channel would grow in the way that it has in just a few short months. But with so much focus on the channel, my day job, and my family, I have slowly started to let myself go. And what I mean by that is I have been neglecting grooming myself properly, and my wife has slowly started getting on my case about it. So when Manscaped had approached me about doing a sponsorship with them for the channel, I thought, maybe I should allocate some time to do some grooming, especially when it comes to the nether region. And I told Manscaped I don't do sponsorships unless I can test and get behind the product, because that affects my reputation and credibility if I promote something that I don't believe in. But guys, this stuff is legit. And apologies to the roughly 2% of women who tune into the channel according to my YouTube analytics, but for the 98% of guys out there tuning in and who've been maybe letting themselves go a bit down south, listen up. If you're not familiar with Manscaped, they are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineering for all your below-the-belt needs. They obsess over their technology development to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. And as an exclusive offer for my viewers, they are offering 20% off plus free shipping of your order with the code BULLCENTRAL at manscaped.com. Guys, Manscaped has created an amazing trimmer, and I'm not just saying that. This thing was incredible. The Lawnmower 3.0, their third generation trimmer, features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skincare technology. I mean, I personally now feel confident shaving my boys without any pain or cuts. Guys, they even offer stuff like ball deodorant. They are all about taking care of that region, so feel free to check them out. Like I said, they're offering you 20% off your order and free shipping with my code BULLCENTRAL. All one word, and that is at manscaped.com. Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, let's get back to the questions, which our next question comes to us from D. Roberts. Do you think Zach Lavine stifles the other players' progress on the team? I'm not disputing Zach's ability, far from it. I see teams like the Utah Jazz play basketball, team basketball, I guess I should say, and they play with everyone touching the ball. Hot take maybe, is Zach Lavine good enough to build a championship contending team around? I love Zach, by the way. He's my favorite player in the NBA. So I like that you said I love Zach, because there is an instant reaction from Bulls fans that if you critique Zach Lavine in any way or question his abilities, that you're a Zach hater. Look, no one is questioning how great he is as a player and how he has continued to improve year after year, and he most certainly deserved to be an all-star this season with the kind of performance he had been showing this year. But I do think there is something to be said that Lavine does get a little tunnel vision from time to time, and team basketball goes out the window. Like, as amazing as that 39-point half against the Hawks was, you could tell Lavine was so focused on putting up 50+ points for his career high in the second half, and it resulted in a loss for the Bulls, which then spiraled into a 5-game losing streak thereafter. I'm not saying that's all on Zach. The team fell apart in that game, and obviously the team contributed to that losing streak after that game. But Lavine, as the leader of the team, has to recognize that he needs to get his teammates involved and playing better rather than just putting up numbers for the sake of getting a career high. So as to your question, does Zach stifle the other players' progress on the team? I mean, in short, no, because Lavine does have the ability, the skill, and the talent to actually make his teammates better when he wants to. We've seen him be a very effective playmaker, a decision maker when his shots aren't falling on offense. We've seen that this season more so than we've seen in the past from Lavine. But like I said, from time to time, Zach still goes back to his old ways and playing heavy isolation basketball and the kind of basketball that works sometimes, but more often than not, it doesn't translate into consistent winning. And then your second question, is Zach good enough to build a championship contending team around? I don't know, this one is so tough, and I always go back and forth on this because I do think that he is good enough to build a championship contending team around, but likely not as a first option on a championship team. Now, he could get there if he improves on some of these areas that we've been talking about on this channel, but I do think Lavine is a piece that supports building around for a championship team just because he is so effective on offense and can score at will. And of course, he's doing it at an even more efficient rate than he ever has in his career. Now, what I don't want happening is for people to misconstrue that this team is better without Zach Lavine because of the Bulls' last 2 games, or that Lavine was holding this team back in any way. No. The Bulls are still a better team with Lavine. However, I do think this is a good lesson for Lavine to take note that, you know, he has a capable team that has talent if he can trust in his players, and every now and then taking a back seat and letting others take over the game, namely Vucevic. Lavine doesn't always have to be the man or the #1 option for this team in order for them to be successful. It's a great question though. Now guys, I realize this video is incredibly long, so I may have to do a part 2 of these mailbag questions as I still have a lot more to get through. But next up, my guy B Cubs 1939. How should we be reacting right now? So this question came on the 15th, which I know is a little bit dated, and that was after the bad loss to the Orlando Magic last week, where I think most Bulls fans, we were just at a loss for what to even think about this team. And I believe that was also the day where it was announced that Zach Lavine would be missing some time after entering into the health and safety protocol. Now you're probably thinking, well, why are you even addressing this question since it's a bit dated? Well, there's a reason for that, and I think a lot of us felt the way B Cubs did. We just didn't really know what to think about this, right? The team had traded for an all-star big man, which is something we needed. We gave up draft picks and young players at the deadline, and the team started performing worse than it did before the deadline. So all I'll say to that is this, as far as how we should be reacting. Well, we shouldn't be overreacting, because look, this season is a wash. And I don't mean it's a wash as if it was a wasted season. I mean in the sense that the Bulls weren't going to be making a championship run this year. This season was always going to be seen as an evaluation year for the new front office, and they've already started making the right moves to clean up the mess from the previous front office, and they will continue to do that in the offseason. The fact that the Bulls have been struggling post-trade deadline in a season that has been strange for the entire league with a compressed schedule that doesn't allow for many practices and lots of traveling. So if you introduce new guys into the roster, things aren't going to be clicking right away. This team is going to need a full offseason, a full training camp to really start meshing well together. And of course, an offseason to add some additional pieces that complement the roster, which hopefully the new front office does. Now, if the Bulls are still struggling next season to what we're seeing now, yeah, I would say that is cause for concern. But from what we're seeing now, obviously it's frustrating as a fan. I myself have been frustrated and at a loss for words multiple times this season, especially when I see bad losses after we just traded for another all-star. But every now and then we have to take a little bit of a step back and remind ourselves that this season is a strange one, really for the whole league. And in any way, you almost have to write this season off if you're the Bulls. You hope that the Bulls make the strides in the right direction, which I believe that they have for the long run, and my hope is that they'll still make the playoffs to get some of these guys some playoff experience and build on that momentum going into next season. I'll wrap it up there though for now, and I'll try to get a part 2 video out for the rest of these mailbag questions. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in the comments, and also let me know your guys' thoughts on my responses to these questions and whether or not you agree. And don't forget, if you want to place an order using Manscaped, you can use my referral code BullsCentral. Be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.